Dear respected teacher, dear noble community, dear beloved community, dear family. Today is the 20th of June, the year 2019. We're in sort of our last day, almost, of our retreat for searchers, for explorers, for every time I say the word science or scientist, it makes me nervous. I loved science when I was a kid, when I was in school. I love math. Those are my two favorite topics. We did some tests and they put me into a school specifically for that. It's called a magnet school, and they specialize in science and math. And back then I was very proud. Oh yeah, I get to go to a, you go to a magnet school, a system in America where they, I guess, weave out people and they do some social engineering, try to mix people up, kids up, that was the Reagan era, I was raised up, educated during the Reagan era. And there's a lot of social engineering at that time. Try to, mess with, people like me and people like other people. There's some consequence to that. But anyways, I ended up loving math, loving science. And I remember I also had a ceramics teacher, my first art teacher. And she made Mrs. Ramos. And she instilled in me the love of art. She's the first one that taught me how to center myself. When you throw a pot of clay, you put your two elbows here on your hip, and you find your center, and you move the clay from your center. If you don't do it, and then your arm gets, and your pot flies. So I'm always indebted to my teacher, Mrs. Ramos. She taught me, actually, probably the first thing about meditation, when you sit on the wheel. Because once you actually, your center and the center of the clay clicks, I don't know, some of you know who do that, it is magic. You can do anything with your hands, and the clay goes, and then you can, and you're no longer afraid, right? And your hand is not stiff, but it has, right? And you can almost feel like you can do anything, and that is meditation. I didn't realize it until later on I met my teacher, that actually, in one sitting, I remember Mrs. Ramos. She taught me how to meditate. She didn't say that. And the breathing was important. And the out-breath is, I remember I learned from her, the out-breath is when you relax. So you start to feel nervous, you're doing something really, she say, focus on your out-breath. Can you believe that? I think there are a lot of meditators out there who don't know they're meditators, but actually it's finding that balance, finding the center. So I just invoke her to ask her for support, Mrs. Ramos, because as you know, I'm tasked today to give you the last talk. when the brothers and sisters were meeting and dividing up the topics, I tried my best to avoid the last talk, but I was not successful. Because our last talk here is, we have to tell you the whole secret of no birth and no death, and you're gonna not be afraid of death anymore, and you go home free and liberated. That's a tough task. So I feel really nervous because I don't want to let my brothers and sisters down, but I will just share my experience, and that always helps me, just to say, look, like yesterday, I think Peter Levine started the talk by saying, just kind of almost acknowledging where we're at as a person who has to share and a person who are actually practicing. So it's nice to always bring it back to, look, I'm going to share you my experience. If it's helpful, then it's fine. If it doesn't, go home and do some more no birth, no death. That's our topic today. It's quite, it is, Thay always ends the retreat with that talk. I think for those who've been to many retreats. And it is an important talk. Those talks sometime it's very a beautiful, the most deep talk on the Buddhist. They call it the cream of the Buddhist teaching. To touch a sense of no birth, no death, and we'll get into a little bit of what that entails. And today I'd like to dedicate this talk to my father, my grandfather. I have a picture here of him. I put him near my bed. I never met him, but I hear many stories about him through my father and my mother. And in our home, we always had an ancestral altar, and his face would be there. And then a lineage of all of our ancestors. So in Asian families, sometimes you see that. And I remember every time I did good in school, and besides getting $1 from my mom, my grandma would take me to the altar, and I had to light incense to this picture. You just do it because you're going to get $1, But okay. And this is a picture of my grandma. She escaped with us. She's here, and this is my niece, and this is moi. And my grandmother, she grew up with us. She also escaped on the boat with us from Vietnam when we had to leave because of the war. And she's the one I remember that put a cloth, a wet cloth on my mouth, because someone had thrown a grenade, a gas grenade in our house, and we had to all run out of the house. So I didn't know why my eyes were itchy and crying, but I remember my grandma grabbing us, and I was like, "Why are you doing that?" And so she lived with us in America, and she passed away in North Carolina. And I remember when I became a monk, I came home to visit her first time, and she was so happy. And in in the Chinese family, the Buddhist family, they believe if one of your members become a monk, then for 7 generations, your ancestor is like you know, jackpot, you know. Yeah. So she's very happy. But there's a part of my grandma's father, my aunt, was not very happy when I became a monk. But I also found out she was happy because she knew in our tradition we also have an altar and we remember our ancestor. And my grandma, my aunt was, they don't have, she's Christian and they don't have an altar in the Christian tradition. And she was going to go live with my aunt near the end of her life because my aunt wanted to take care of her the last few years. So she was really afraid because she knew my aunt didn't have an altar. And so the first time I came back to visit, she gave me a picture of her and she went out and had my mom take her to take a picture of her in her finest clothes. So she would give me the picture and say, please put this on the altar when I pass away, and remember to offer me food when I pass. Really, she was not afraid of dying, but she was afraid that nobody will remember her and cook, because there's an ancestral day in the tradition of ancestral worship where you have to remember your grandma, what's her favorite dish. She loves this dish called Phap. Phap is like you cut vegetable really fine and you make this wrapping. It's her favorite dish. Besides, really, she likes McDonald's pancakes. Easier to get, the fluffy one. And she likes really well-cooked muesli until it's like creamy with condensed milk. So remember her favorite cooking, and on that day, you offer it to her, and you can light some. I also promised her I will light her paper nuggets that looks like gold, and she's the one that taught me how to fold these paper and make nuggets, gold nuggets out of it, and you make a big tower. And you burn it for your ancestor. I think they go gambling up there somewhere, but they need money up there. But my grandma would remember my grandfather, and so every time it was his day, my mom had to cook all the favorite food, and I would sit there and fold these nuggets with my grandma, and we would burn. And my grandma would say, the higher you make that piece of ash go, the closer your grandfather will hear the message. It's like email, you know? It's like, it will have better... So I share you... this is not very Buddhist, so I apologize. But it is what I grew up with. And now every time my grandma, I remember her, and my grandfather, I think of them, and I do still fold the gold nuggets for my grandma. And when I'm home in the States, I do try to find McDonald's and buy her a pancake. She used to sew a lot of our clothes, and I have a memory of her. Her hand's very shaky, and so she needs me to come and help her put the thread in the needle of the sewing machine, and it happens quite often. So, so I have to run, and sometimes you get annoyed. Grandma. But now every time I sew my own clothes, because so many times I've done it for my grandma, every time I do, yeah, it's very natural to feel your grandma present. So this is something very real. If we, how do you call it? If we remember enough times, that actually many times I can walk and whenever someone compliments me for being kind or being gentle, I think of my grandfather, even though I never met him. Because the story, my grandfather, he was very generous. He became very successful businessman. He traded with foreign countries and he became very... and so he let people borrow money and if they don't pay back, it's okay. So that when he passed away, like many of my family friends, my parents' friends, they would remember the day he passed away, that a lot of people came and to pay tribute to him. So I hold on to that, I cherish that memory to see that actually my life now, it's actually a continuation of my grandfather. And I like to remember like that. Even though I never met him, I can feel him, playing with kids, being kind, and helping out wherever we can. So today's, I ask for their support to share with you some of the things that we go through. The Buddhist teaching is, I remember our teacher reminding us all the time, it's not just for studying. It's not Buddhist study, but it's Buddhist practice. So the teachings are to help us train ourselves. So sometimes in explaining the Buddhist teaching, it becomes like a study, and it borderlines kind of like becomes a description of reality and of the world and how things work. And then people get really, really caught up in that. But we must remember that all these teaching is to help us practice, to train, mindfulness training. So it's not mindfulness study. You don't study mindfulness. So this is something very important for us to remember, that the Buddha 2,600 years ago discovered this path. And my sisters share the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the diligence, the Four Diligence. These things are concepts, ideas to help us look at ourselves and to look at our world. So it's to train us to begin to look like that. And this is very important because we will... as we look into how the Buddha described the two ways of looking at reality, I think it was mentioned by Dan Siegel, the ultimate truth and the relative truth. And he got mixed up between the words, so I just want to clarify for you that the word relative and ultimate, they go together with truth. And historical and ultimate goes with the word dimension. Okay? So when you say historical dimension and relative truth, it makes sense, right? The truth is relative. It's relational. And then here, dimension here, ultimate dimension, and then historical dimension, in the dimension of humans, of things that move and affect and cause. So just to clarify for you that there's these realms, and I think in science they're beginning to find out there's some stuff that's quite weird and quite, someone said, absurd, right? Doesn't make sense. How can one thing... So they're starting to touch a kind of a truth about our world, and that is something underneath that's hard to explain. And so today, I'll just go over the, what do you call it, the cerebral part, and then hopefully I can go over that quickly, and then I'll share with you how that's helped me in my practice. So there's a relative truth, or the historical dimension. History is in here. Time. Relative. In relation. This wave is higher. This wave is different. This is me. This is my father. So there's a lot of, in this dimension, there's a lot of birth, death, coming, going. So these concepts, they happen. We need to go home, right? We will take a train, we will go somewhere. So these are in the historical, in the human, in the, how do you call it, the world as we experience it. In, I guess in science they would call it in the realm of large objects, I guess. Is that correct? And there's another realm under here called the ultimate dimension. Or the ultimate truth. And in this ultimate dimension, the ideas of coming and going, of being, of existing and not existing, those things don't apply. Of birth and death. And Thay has come up with many ways to help us kind of at least get a glimpse of it, that actually there's another way of looking at reality. A famous one that Thay likes to share is we have, and these notions here, these two ways of looking help us ultimately to remove our ideas of a way of looking dualistically. Okay, so remember that this right here is to train us. So as monastic, we are asked to actually always be looking at things and not be caught by the appearance and the sign of it, and to look beyond that. So look beyond the sign so you don't get caught by dualism. So remember that. This is to help us remove because we're very, left, right, wrong. Father, me, different. You, not me. So we're very outside environment, me, the experiencer, the observer, the artwork. I'm the artist. You see, so there it begins to build an idea of a self. I earned this 10 points, this A+. I earned it myself. I deserve it. I made it myself. So this is the kind of system I grew up in education. It builds a sense of like me, myself, separate from others. So it kind of begins to, we feel separated and feel disconnected, at least for me, growing up with a system like that. And I became very competitive. So left and right, choosing which party you belong to. And Thay has a very beautiful way of explaining it with just a piece of paper. Like the left and the right. They manifest at one time. You try to remove the right side, you keep trying to remove it, right? See? When can the left exist? Can you take the right off and have the left exist? This is a beautiful example. It's a very, what do you call it, in science we love these kind of dissonance in, you know, or like you take a pen, right? Left, right, or right, left, right? And you cut the left. You keep cutting, right? I don't want the left, or I don't want the right. And you cannot have one without the other. And what does this exercise help us with? To kind of like be comfortable that two things can manifest, the left and the right. So what has helped me train is I have to be careful once I start choosing one side. I choose. And then in our training as monastic, we have to be very careful. Like, So it invites us. This kind of training helps us to actually go a little bit deeper and say, my sister, she is me. It's tough when you're having difficulty. Right away you feel you want to separate. So this is, first of all, a training to look at and the three ways to help us, I guess, play with this, to touch the ultimate dimension, is the teaching on dependent co-arising. And this is what we would call the cream of the Buddhist teaching. When he had a lot of suffering and he wanted to find out why, the cause of so much suffering in the world. So this young man in India searched many teachers, teach him different techniques to how to, even sublime, kind of suppress the body so you don't feel the suffering of the body. Suppress the mind. Tie it down so you will have no senses. So these are the different teachers that try to, with yoga techniques, to try to end suffering. And the Buddha tried really hard to use bodily techniques as well as mental techniques to not have to suffer and to be free. And in the end, he failed. He burnt out. Can you believe it? Nobody ever says that. The Buddha burnt out on his spiritual path. I think that should be like more emphasis than actually his enlightenment. The Buddha burnt out. He went into a cave and he tried to get to the bottom of it. You know, scientists in the laboratory, 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, haven't eaten for days. And he burnt out. He came crawling out of the cave, almost to death. And luckily he was saved. Thay in O Path White Cloud, beautiful moment. If you ever get to read the O Path White Cloud, is one of my favorite moments of a girl finding the Buddha, Siddhartha at the bank and feeling his suffering, and then offering rice milk to his lip. It's so tender, that moment. And the Buddha was able to feel some revival. And soon she kept every day bring him food, and he was able to rebalance. And he remembered, anyway, I just go through that quickly. He recovered, decided, man, this stuff doesn't work. This trying too hard doesn't work. So he decided to review everything. And one of the things he realized, no longer running from his suffering, he began to see the connection, the interdependent nature of everything, the connection rather than the pushing away, the connection between suffering and happiness and peace, that you don't need to run away from it. Dependent co-arising is his babam, aha! I don't need to grasp anymore. I don't need to run away anymore. Actually, when the conditions are sufficient, a wave appears. And when it is insufficient, it seems to disappear. That is so, that's it. And you know what I love about it? My brother wrote it the other day. This is because that is. That's pretty, how many words? 5 words. That is it for the Buddha. You realize this, you can leave here liberated. That's it. It's like, I'm here because my grandfather is there. You are there, therefore I'm here. So we train to see that, because we are really fooled by our other way of training. You must be from China, you're from Vietnam, you're from Australia. Right? And so this is a difficult training. You are not my mother. I will treat you like a stranger. You are not my brother. So these kind of training help us to see beneath the appearances. So the Buddha, this is what he saw and our teacher kind of reworded it, interbeing. This is a kind of antidote for your ideas of being and non-being. And to feel my grandma is no longer here with me. She's dead. That's what we would normally say. She's no longer. My grandfather, I never met him. He does not exist. But is that true? My ancestor, I don't really know them. And so these they challenge us. And the word Thay likes to use the word manifestation. And this is a way of looking at the nature of things. When the conditions are favorable, you get angry. When the conditions are favorable, you get jealous. When the conditions are favorable, you get depressed and sad. So you begin to look at your feelings, begin to look at your body, you begin to look at your ideas as just a conglomerate of conditions. Your ideas of pretty, ugly, it's not really yours. It's the whole culture. Collectively, everyone created that. Your ideas of peace, of happiness, is very different from other people in other culture. So we begin to see, and it helps us become more open. This practice helps us begin to see things as not so caught up that it's actually fixed. And the meditation, our favorite, is Thay, like such a beautiful teacher, because he gave such beautiful example. And for those who are new, I just want to share this with you. It is what do you call it? A classic Thay teaching, a box, right? And Thay would ask, can anyone see a flame? Thay would say, actually much gentler, dear little flame, where are you? Do you exist or do you not exist? The same can be said of our grandma. Grandma, where are you? Have you died? Are you somewhere in me? Are you just my memory? Where are you? So you can invite your grandma or the little flame as it looks, with just one more condition. And you say, little flame, where are you? Are you inside the box? I love that one. I say, are you in there? Hello? Dear Thay, I'm not in the box, or I'm not outside of the box. I will appear when the conditions all come together. And I just need one last condition, and that's the help of your hand. And Thay would take out the match. I think so lovely. I'm sorry, I'm not doing I'm doing injustice to it. But Thay would say, little flame, can you see it now? People would say, I would sit down there and say, no, there's no flame yet. The coming and going. Like right now, can you see the sunflowers? Everyone would say, no, no sunflower. That's the difference between a meditator and a non-meditator. A poet and a non-poet. An artist can see the sunflowers. The artist can see to the edge of the cosmos. A poet can see all the way back to the ancestor. You see the eye? Don't get caught Where is the flame? So this is a training. It's very difficult because most of us are going, okay, I get it. This is such a banal exercise. Come on, give me more advanced Buddhist teaching, please. Of course, you would say, oh, now I see a flame. Thay would ask, dear little flame, where do you come from? Where do you come from? That's a good question for your scientists. I bet you know all the chemistry that goes around that. Oh, where have you gone? You have died. You're no longer being. You've disappeared. I can still smell you. I can feel you. Where are you? So this is an exercise that asks us to invite. And the little flame always answered, dear Thay, I come from nowhere and I go to nowhere. Whenever the conditions are sufficient and the last condition of your hand strike the match, I manifest. Isn't it beautiful? When the conditions all come together, the flame manifests. That's a new way of looking. And I think it's very scientific. It's very evidence-based. Look around. You think you come from nowhere? Try to find one thing with your eyes that can appear out of nothing. Look to the end. They're trying to look for something like that. It's very difficult. Try to do that for meditation. Sit and try to find one thing that came from nothing, and try to find something that became nothing, disappeared completely. And I think, as you all know, there's nothing lost, just a transformation of the energy. And this is a new way of looking. But we are so habitually trained to see differently, and so it requires training. Our feelings, when they happen, they become real to us. I am. This is my anger. It has a cause. It came from somewhere, from my mother, my father. They are the cause of my anger. So this is the way where I was growing up as a young man. I blame a lot of my situation on my family, having put me into a country where I had to fight because of discrimination. So I didn't accept much of my past. I blame my father because he was not the father I would like. So we begin to see many things like that. You are from a different culture. You look strange. Because why? Because it makes us have to actually put effort to accept and to be open. That your father doesn't really want to be like that. It's because he suffered. He doesn't know how else. Having lost everything, being depressed, comparing himself with other fathers. And so he was not able to give you the tenderness that you wanted. And so these are the things that this practice helped. We begin to see all the conditions that came together to make our Father, to make his feeling, to make the way he perceives the world. And that really was my liberation. That is one of my first light into meditation. I remember first having that thought, and it was so liberating to see my mental process of blaming my father stop. Like, why do I do that to myself? He has not done anything. All I did was hear his voice, and I saw that go through like a slide projector. And I remember staying with it, and the feeling subsided, and learning from my teacher to look at my father as a 5-year-old child. See the condition? Looking and imagining my father as a 5-year-old child helps you touch the other dimension that you don't see. All the different conditions that came together to make who your father is in this moment in America, 1980. So I'm trying to share this and try to make it really a kind of more relevant, so it can be really cerebral if I'm not careful. And so here, this is a way of reflection. You see the tool, matchbox, match, and it helps us touch the reality of things. You don't see the flame, but if you look carefully, you can see the flame. You can say, oh, I'm just imagining it. But then when you look at someone and you think you know them, you think that's not your imagination? When you remember your history, do you think that is real? When you have a feeling and you say, but I am angry, I am really angry, we believe it's being, right? And this is the way we are trained to think. And this is an invitation for us to hey, don't be too sure. And this is one of the cause of my suffering. I believed too much in everything that was taught to me, and I didn't question. Get a good job, good salary, find a partner, make some children, have a house, 2 garage if you can. And you're set. Oh, retirement plan, don't forget. We accept that is happiness, right? That is the dream of every... At least I just came back from Vietnam. I'm like, oh God, please don't have that dream. Or India, oh please, we don't need that dream. The planet needs another dream. If we have that kind of dream, we're in big trouble. So meditation started with my healing, accepting my father, accepting myself, accepting where I'm at as myself. That was the beginning of happiness. As a young man, I always tried to strive to prove that I am better, because I came from different culture, and I'm put in a society that's quite different. So there's a lot of discrimination, judgment. They didn't understand me. I don't understand them. I don't need to understand them, but I want to be better. American, A plus, A plus plus, or supersize it. I love that culture. I grew up from that culture. Just to let you know some of my background of my suffering. I grew up in Los Angeles, and that is a gift. You grow in a culture that has so many culture. So many people learning how to get along. And it's a gift to be in a place with discrimination and suffering, because you actually have a chance. So the idea of being and non-being, the idea of birth and death, I think this is the toughest one to Thay would draw a line to represent kind of like time, linear time, the time that we're very used to because we have calendars, and today is June 20th, tomorrow is another day. And there was a day when we were born, our birthday, Our birthday. And we believe that there's when we were born, we come into being. Yeah, I'm here, you're here, we exist, right? And we also believe there's that day coming. I don't want to believe that. Don't tell me that. Do you believe that day is coming? But just don't remind me, okay? Every time I see the kids come back for the summer, it always reminds me. Oh. So there's a kind of that day coming. It's a little addition of LA style to Thay's beautiful teaching. And so and when that day comes, where do we go? We believe, we become, we don't know what we become, but we're no longer being. So the idea of birth and death, it goes with our ideas of being and non-being. Where are you lit to flame? The flame doesn't exist. Where are you, Grandma? She's no longer here. She's dead. Stop imagining it. You need to go to the hospital. She's dead. Stop pretending that she's alive. So these are things that our belief. And this is there anything that exists and then not exists? That's a challenge that the Buddha asked us. Find something that is something and becomes nothing. And I think those who, or is it thermodynamics, are, I think this is becoming quite evident, but we haven't really applied that to our relative historical dimension. We kind of know that from chemistry, becomes gas, it disappears. Like right now, Thay would say, oh, there's a cloud. It exists. And then when the cloud becomes rain, it's like, oh, where's the cloud? And we all know, we all accept every time Thay says, yeah, that's so easy, Thay. It becomes rain, it becomes moisture. But actually, the one that he said, can you see a cloud? And we would all go, Can you see the sunflowers? So it is a borderline imaginary, but it is a way of training for us to look at things to help us suffer less. You see the difference? It is not to say that's how it is, believe me, trust me, the cloud is right there. No, it is to train us to don't be deceived by our eyes, by our feelings, by our way we perceive things. So fundamentally, these things help me in my practice to not be too sure. I think one of my brother or sisters shared. So when things appear, you go, oh. So it helps us touch a little bit more equanimity, a little bit more stability, peace. And why do we need that? Because sometimes a storm will come. And the way we look at the world is a little different. And our feelings, they become a little bit more real. I've been depressed as a monk, and it was tough, and nothing works. Yeah, and there's something, it brings up all that stuff. Yeah, trauma, these things we've been learning, oh, it's great. And the practice of, the habit of being still, of being watching, of being mindful of your feeling, luckily by that time, the third year, I already began to have enough, I'd say, I didn't leave this place, I stayed with it. And the practice of equanimity, of being aware, of being mindful, this is why there's so much emphasis in our teaching on mindfulness and staying in the present moment. Why does Thay teach that every time he's sitting there? Present moment, wonderful moment. Breathe. You're alive. It's like, what is that? What does that have to do with my suffering, my story? You see, when it comes, the storm, I sat in this bamboo grove, snuck myself in between the bamboo, and the wind blew the bamboo, and I cried. It's so nice to cry. And to be with that strong judgment. I'm not good enough. I can't be mindful all the time. I can't be chasing you, my teacher. none of this works. I don't feel happy. I'm supposed to be happy as a monk. I'm supposed to be peaceful. I don't feel any of that. You know, there's a moment I felt very guilty shaving my head because I was not appreciating life. And I felt really, I didn't know why either, actually. But the practice helped me stay with it. I did not run like I did when I was in LA. And anything Thay helped me stop and to be with my feelings, to be with my sadness, my judgment. I remember as a young man, I would hit a limit, what they call urban angst. I think later I read somewhere. It's like just the urban environment and everyone honking and everyone fighting for the freeway lane and everyone kind of like rushing, waiting in line. You know, they have a sickness. All that builds up. And I remember one time I got so... And you don't have anybody directed at. You just... you know? And so I take my car. It was like, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I go driving in the parking lot of Sears. Huge parking lot. And I step on the gas, full pedal, screeching in the parking lot. Yeah, I know, I belong in the hospital. But you see the running? Wanting to run from this feeling? That was my... I could have just... And there I go. Just one... The edge, because borderline, local, huh? And this, and I share this because I know a lot of young people are in that spot right now. So how to take care of our feeling? So basic. And this is what Thay has been trying his whole life to teach us, through the war, through the refugee, through the veterans, through the business people, through the young people, through the artists, everyone. What is it? Our feelings. How to be with our feelings. Basic. And the breathing is the tool. You train yourself to be with your breathing, be with your steps, because that will be your anchor. So when the emotion comes, it's like you holding a balloon. I know you're there, and I got you. Don't go away. So now I deal with my feelings with a little bit more smiling to it. Before it was a lot of tears, because it's hard to change a habit, to believe and to judge yourself and to believe everything that you say about yourself. And going through the bamboo grove, you begin to see when conditions are favorable, your feelings come. And when, and those conditions might be triggered in the immediate surrounding, or it can be ancestral, that you have no idea where they come from. I can imagine now, 8 years old, running from war, not knowing why. Your family totally turned upside down into another country, probably unexplained stuff. They would, our scientists would probably let us know. But I didn't need to find out exactly what it was. But more importantly, that it went through my body. And I think this is what I love about some of our sharings from our distinguished guests, Peter Levine, Dan Siegel, and many others who of you are here. There's sometimes the energy go through us, and we don't need to call it a name. At least my experience. And we don't need to, more important is that we don't identify with it. This is for me the trigger, not the trigger, when that happened, I no longer identify with it. And that is a training, a way of looking at our feelings. You know the 5 skandhas, did we go through the 5 skandhas? The body, the feelings, perception, the mental formation, and our consciousness. Those 5 things, the Buddha just separated them to help us practice. So our feelings, 1, very easy, right? Our perception, how we look at the world, be careful. What you see out there could be just in your head. What you heard, you didn't really hear. You just heard what you wanted to hear. So we have to train to actually become very mindful and careful of how we feel and how we perceive. And the mental formation. Mental formation is a beautiful word. It's in Chinese, it's either Han, or sometimes it could be Phap. So mental formation. And this has helped me a lot in my practice, because I have a lot of ideas. Mental formation is just notions, ideas. I have a mental formation about my father, and I lock him in my mental formation. And to know that those things come to be because of the way we were raised, the way we react to our environment, the way our parents treated us, you see? And my father is like that. All his mental formation is the same. So I begin to see the world as dependent, co-arising, or the many words for that, interdependent, co-arising. So dependent, everything is dependent on each other, and they manifest when the conditions are sufficient. So that teaches us, it trains us to look at the relationship, the process. So when we have a mental formation, it might last a second, it might last a day. I still have some right now I know is happening, and I'm just careful. You know, like there's a brother I'm having a mental formation about. It's lasting longer. I'm watching it and finding out where it comes from. Every time I see him, it forms. I see the sister. You have a the same habit I had when I was living with my father. He came in the door. I don't even know it was him, but I heard the door go crunk. I immediately, that's my father. Always shutting the door like that. If only, See the father in you? Where is my father? Is he the one that just entered the door? He exists. Your father also in here. It's cool, huh? This is really cool. Because it's like, it helps you kind of like, don't be too sure now. It could be all in your head. Anyway, that is, I'm trying to make it fun. I hope it's not too boring. And the idea of coming and going. So that links, of course, with the manifestation. Nothing comes and nothing goes. There's a song, no coming, no going, no after, no before. I hold you close to me. I release you to be so free, because I am in you and you are in me. Because I am in you and you are in me. Is the little flame, where did it go? Does it not exist anymore? Grandma, where have you gone? Where are you? Are you in the thread hole? At the tip of a needle? Or in that favorite dish? Every time I eat it, when Mom makes it. Or when I go to McDonald's, where are you? Are you waiting in line? Supporting this great institution? My grandma wouldn't care. You tell her, Grandma, you shouldn't go to McDonald's. It's such a terrible place. She would go to McDonald's. So this is I think these things are somewhat easy to understand, but remember what I shared. These things are for us to keep concentrated, to help us practice. Because to break out of a habit of looking is very difficult. And I'm still working on it. And I think all of us, if we have senses, we're quite easily fooled by our perception. So the last, of course, is the same and different. And this is so important in our times now of globalization, where we, the word same and different is such a, where do you come from? What culture? What ethnic group are you? So these create a lot of suffering right now, and it will be our challenge, coming with the moving of people and so on. And Thay has a beautiful, ta-da! And this is, I have to share with you, it's so sweet. And Thay uses this to help us look deeply. So these exercises to invite us to look deeply. They help us re-examine what we accept as our notions. So is that little flame a friend of ours again? Hello, little flame. It's been a long time. Little candle here. We see one candle with the flame. And Thay would bring up a friend from another country. And go, oh, hello. Are you the same flame as this flame? Or are you different? And Thay would ask, anybody know? And somebody will be the one who does the homework, you know. Invite, are they the same flame? Or are they different? So the tendency to be dualistic, different, oneness, right? But they're two flames. And Thay would say, dear Thay, I'm not the same nor different. That is it's hard to, because it oscillates in our mind, right? See? It's two. But can you see your mind going same difference, same difference, same difference. I did that. Gave me a headache. You know those pictures, it's like, is it a rabbit or is it a woman? You know that I forget, is it a rabbit? It was something like that. Or an old lady, that's right. With the chin. And our mind, it doesn't like to be in that state of, call it like a dissonance. We just like things to be simple. Apple pie is apple pie. Cherry pie is cherry pie, please. You have nothing to do with me. You're a strange person. I don't know you. So this is the challenge. And it's so important now, more than ever. Those are animals. They are not humans. Those are plants. Have nothing to do with me. That's a carrot. Vitamin A. These are carbohydrates. So if you begin to see things are us and things are not us. The environment, the air, oxygen, nothing to do with me. It's there for me to breathe. It's not me. The rice I eat, where does it come from? I bought it. It's my rice. I earned it. I worked for it. Who bent down to pick it? So important for us to look beyond the same and the different. This is Mother Earth calling for us to not look beyond what we. This is a challenge. When I turn on the faucet, I sometimes forget. But I was just in Vietnam, in the mountain. They have one well for the whole village. They go in Uganda. When I turn on the faucet, it has nothing to do with anything. It's just water. So the being mindful is being mindful of our interconnection, our relation. And we don't get this in education. Did anyone get this in education? Please say yes, somebody. Modern education? Thank you. Yay! You kids get it. Wonderful. Yay, yay. So this is these four notions. You see the dualism? And you can go on. Left, right, wrong, suffering and happiness. That one I had a hard time. I still have a hard time accepting. Do they really have to go together? And more and more I look at, reflect, and I have time. And this requires time. I know time is just a historical dimension, but you need to have time to actually look at the world and question what you've been taught and made to believe. If you don't have time, I gotta get to work, I gotta go shopping, I have to keep the bank. You don't have time, then it's very difficult when that moment comes. So unfortunately, this is you might have a few aha moments. Oh, I get it, we are all one. But if you don't put time to train, Mother Earth, I am you. I have trust. If you don't put time every day to train, to look beyond the signs, beyond the appearances, then when it comes, you will be caught by the appearance. And you're going to blame, and you're going to grasp. That's because as you all know, in neuroscience, you don't train, if you don't, what is it? You use it or lose it. What is it? What vibrates or something? What fires together? Wires together. Oh, that's so cool. That's like really a communal living there. You see, the new science is telling us something. And this is why it's so important for us to actually train our mind. If you don't train your mind, someone will train it for you. And I don't think they have your interest in mind. Sorry, I'm subversive right now. But it is the truth. People are training, they're having big meetings to train how to train your mind. And so this is an invitation for us to have a little, start a little revolution in yourself. Like, no, I'm not going to train that way. I don't have my cell phone, but I have a cell phone now. So difficult. It's really difficult. I have it next to my bed. So these are just some elements that are coming into our culture, coming into our world, and you see how it's affecting young people. So this is an invitation for us to re-look at our world, the historical world, the historical dimension, and don't be too sure about all your ideas and notions. I think I learned from the last few presentations about energies. You know, there's certain energies in us that get caught. Right? It's a beautiful way of looking at ourselves and our relation with the world as energy. When you go eat a meal, what is that? And when you go to the bathroom, something very beautiful happening. The trees, breathing, and to see our feelings as energy, that's kind of easy, right? When you're angry. So if you begin to see energy, then you learn how to manage your energy. When the energy comes up, the breathing can help you bring the energy down. If anything I learned, I can do that now. When this starts firing, whether it's the front or the back or the middle, I can bring that energy down with my breathing. And that can be trained. But you need to dedicate it. You need to invest in it. Nothing comes. Like any sports, any art form. So it's a matter of whether you want to prioritize that. And that links to your happiness and how you handle suffering. Because we've been trained by our culture, by our parents, by our society, to look a certain way and to run after certain things. Don't think you're free. We are just a bag of habits. Come on. Get to work now. And what kind of habits do we want? I accept that I'm habitual. But we can train to have certain habits and reduce certain habits and even eliminate certain habits. And I think many of you here have some experience with that. It's so nice not to be running after chocolate bars like I used to. And I didn't even train in that. I just lived here outside of America. And slowly, there were no Snickers around. Bookshop doesn't have Snickers. You know Snickers bar? You know, like I used to eat them like carrots, you know. And when they came out with supersized, and I was trained during Halloween to love sweets. You see that? Where did I get the love for sugar and chocolate? Halloween. You grab your pillow and you go out there and you get a bag full of sweets. Then you just share it. Just look again, and that we think we're free and we get to choose to eat hamburger and Snickers bar when we want, to drink these energy sodas that promise us all kinds of stuff. They know what you like, so they write it on there, and this is great, just what I need. So we look at energy. There's three things that help me. This is our habits, our wounds. My sister wanted me to share this. And our internal knots, mental knots. So three things that has helped me in my practice. And as whatever practice you're doing, as a researcher, scientist, therapist, we all have also our historical dimension of suffering and family and history, right? So in the process of healing others, we are also healing ourselves. And so as a monastic, we also have habits, we have wounds, and we have internal knots, we call them. And these are things that help me kind of identify. I have some wounds from my father, from the war, from refugee experience, from being discriminated in a culture that was different from mine. So I have wounds that are like, ready, not healed. So sometimes it comes up, and I can identify, and I have habits as well. So these are energy, you see? Wounds, kind of like when you hurt yourself, it's like a leak of blood. And there's habits, also an energy, right, flow. And then there's internal knots, energies of thinking. This is one thing that we also have trained to relook, that thought is energy. And it was hard for me to accept that at first. If anything, an unwholesome thought will create some kind of, right? It will clog energy. But the hard part is seeing that my thought can affect yours, or can affect you. Maybe through my expression it's easy to see, but it's hard to believe that. But if you have ever touched that, you can see the wonders of that, and see how important it is to have right thinking, wholesome thinking, helpful thinking, gentle thinking. So the internal knot is when the thinking, the notion is. So in Buddhist term, we call it internal formation, internal knot. My dad, we box him, he's like that. It takes some of our energy and we hold it. We call it an internal knot. We have a lot of them. We have some big ones, and we have some little ones. The irritation. God, why should I keep doing that? Those little ones. But there are some trauma. So these are ways for us to recognize. And the breathing, belly breathing, deep breathing, mirror awareness, some of the things my sister have shared. Having someone help you, hold your hand, so you feel more calm with it, being with your brothers and sisters. So with your habit energy, you begin to recognize anywhere you have habit energy, you have to identify them. You have a habit of brushing your teeth. Identify, how are you? I recognize, why am I brushing my teeth so hard? It's just smart. I recognize that it's my rushing, my wanting, my striving. I change my hand, my left hand. Then I begin to recognize that energy. The walking meditation, when I first learned it, was very difficult. God, go faster. How do I get around them? Okay, now. It's my LA driving mode. Okay, Habits. You identify those, especially the ones that say something. Waiting in line for food. I'm just going to get the good food. It's a habit. feels good. Ah, I got what I want. Identify your habits and retrain. So cool. Wait in line, go last. All the good food is gone. You have no choice. Ah, rice, soy sauce. The happiness of no choice. Ah. This is a real experience. If you have problem with food, go last. And then you just scrape and you go, thank you, I have some food. Wow, I'm so thankful. Right? It's such a relief not to kind of like, should I get that one? Another one, another one. Oh, there's so much. I had that. I had no problem with eating until I came to the monastery, by the way. Because, you know, outside you get food, you buy food, whatever you want, Taco Bell, and but here, not so much stimulation, so food, my habit. You know, I eat from a small bowl, and I gave myself a rule, cannot pass the top. Habits, you see habits. You have to identify your habits and play with it. It's fun. My brother and I would go in the kitchen, get the big bowl, okay, habits. I'm going to let you have your habits. You fill it up and eat as much as you can for 1 week. And we have to finish everything. We had a discussion, and so we made a pact. All right, let's get the big bowl and get as much food as we want and see what happens. We got to test. If it's not good for us, we got to know for ourselves. And so we did funny things like that. So habits, find out where they are, and train. Figure out how to train yourself. And you know your wounds. Find out. My father, the school I went to, these people that don't look like me, that like to beat me up. Wounds. And what's beautiful is that you don't pick it. Just know and give it good environment. Sometimes you can actually, the wounds need help, like some of our brothers and sisters are doing, and some the therapists, you're working with that. To gently put it, maybe it's festering. So psychologically we have wounds, but I've also discovered that when you also focus on the flowers, the wonders of life, the beauty, the peace, the happiness that is happening at the same time as the womb is happening. You don't need to get rid of all your wounds to enjoy the wonders of life. Know that it's there, keep the environment clean, and have trust that your body, your mind, the environment you put yourself in. Sometimes I don't bandage my wounds. I like to watch, to see the wonders of the healing process. And it itch, and I don't scratch. Sometimes I scratch a little bit. But I try not to make it bleed again. You know how that is. So wounds, and I think sometimes we need help from others to discover some wounds are hidden. But like I shared, sometimes in meditation, there are wounds, energy that go through, and it's wanting to break through. You find nature. You hug a tree, and you shake, you sweat, and you allow it to go through without further thinking. Oh, why is this happening to me? I shouldn't be like this. So the process of being with it, bringing the habit of learning how to bring the thinking down is all helpful. practice of stopping, recognizing, holding. You don't need to figure out why. And this has helped me. There's some stuff that I don't know the name of, but I know it's ancestral. Sometimes there are big little waves. Sometimes there's a big wave. And we're very lucky. We have a community here that help us when the big wave comes. When the big wave comes, we have time to be with it. I speak less. I try not to go out much. I take more time in the forest, do walking. I spend time on my hammock. So the process is not just mental, discursive, analytical storytelling. It's also energetic, accepting that you don't know, and trusting that the earth has a way, Mother Earth. We get caught because we get stuck in just the human realm, the realm of notions, words, ideas, stories. Right? There's also energy, and I think that's beautiful what our brothers and sisters are exploring, some of our guests. Energy, the vortex wounds. And the last is our the world of notions, our internal formation, the constructions that we have in our mind, the ideas that we have about the world, about the planet. These are notions. And this is, I guess, our challenge. Yeah, sometimes technology can be a good teacher. Huh? Sometimes they're static. You just have to shift around a little bit. You don't have to ask why. It just happens because the conditions are like that. You see, it's beautiful, and that's what I love about meditation. And I'll leave with this. We're so trained in our culture to search and to understand, and to. But there are also other things that are it's not understandable. That's what I learned being here. Some things look like they're disorganized, but it has a purpose. What I learned from following my teacher is if he explains it to you, it's too late. You have to actually intuit and guess and feel it. And when you're right, you have an insight. If someone tells you, then you have a notion. So what I learned being in this community is another way of experiencing the world, more feeling-wise, more intuitively. And sometimes some of those things cannot be explained. God, there's so many examples. I don't know, kind of like... There's a way of making tea. And if I tell you you do this, you do that, you do that, then you know how to make tea. In that moment. Next time you make tea, you go, and it didn't come out right. You know, it's a funny example, but it's stuff like that, you know? It's like, you gotta know what tea is supposed to taste like. And you gotta adjust every time. So it's not like you learn 1, 2, 3, and it's... So in the monastery, it's kind of like that. Basically, I think what I learned here most is from the practice of mindfulness is to learn how to feel more and to the clay. Remember the pot? And it's hard to explain. That's what is difficult about this process. There's certain things that happen in your mind is good for you, but it might not be good for another person. So it's very, we would love to have it all figured out, but we don't. And this is what's difficult. We come here and we each bring our ancestor, and each brother, each sister. The best we can do is try to understand ourselves, and from understanding ourselves, we have more space for the other person to understand themselves, and we hope the best. There's a period where I do try to ask, oh, the community doesn't understand me. You know, it's a lot of... But I think the more I understand about myself, my habits, my wounds, know how to take care of my suffering, then your world, the way you experience your world and what you demand of the world is different. That's, I don't know if I make that very clear, but that's the arrow that Thay always draws, inward. But that's not to say that we don't have work to do, to change and to help our society, to help our culture become more open, more accepting, more free. We can also be doing that work. So the internal work, the inside and outside, doesn't have to go this first and that first. And you see this happening when we come together. When someone transforms and they are touching something very deep, and we listen deeply, it is also our transformation. It is also our liberation, our happiness. They are suffering. They're knowing how to suffer. They're being with their suffering. And this happiness is not the same, it's a spiritual happiness. It's like, I'm so happy for you. It's a beautiful thing. And this is one thing we need to find a challenge for ourselves. Our teacher, two things he mentioned about therapy. Present moment based therapy. So everything needs to be grounded in the present moment. So as we do therapy and as we do healing with ourselves, we need to be established in the present moment. So don't be too creative. Experience, feel, energy, now, what is happening. Take care of it. What is the story you're telling me? How is it affecting you now? So it's a very always coming back and not letting the future, what you want to be, fully healthy, fully rid of this, pull you, because that will actually, there's no shortcut. You look in nature, look around, there's nothing. Anything that's shortcut is probably plastic. This is something I think we need to look at, because it's innate in our culture. We want something. So that's the future pulling us. And the past becomes a burden, that we think the story we tell of ourselves is the only version. So these are things to be, be careful. And that has been a kind of root of my suffering, chasing after and pushing my past. So it's present moment based kind of healing. So we learn to stay with it, calm. So the present moment helps us not be push or pull. So that in a way, if you be trained to be in the present moment while you're eating, this is where the bell, you know, the chime, ding dong 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 dong, right? And what do? At first we do it automatically. Okay, everyone does it, I'll do it. But soon you see that you train. It's a check-in every time you hear it, and it's kind of like random sometimes. You come back to the present moment and you check in with your feelings, your body, energy, my tense. What is this? Creating a new habit, so when the storm comes, your energy of mindfulness and concentration, your habit of staying in the present with it is strong. If you don't develop it, you don't have the energy. The mother who's in distress, busy, dispersed, how will she hold the baby? Yeah? What does the baby feel? So if the mother learns how to be still in the present moment, that is the energy that you have to hold the baby when it appears. And it's great. 4 seasons are within us. Sometime, but there are feelings, and they're just going through us. So we become more equanimous. That means don't do anything. Oh, it's okay. It's not indifferent. It's being at peace, acceptance. And the other is community-based. This is Thay's life's work. Community-based therapy. He's been challenging us to look at that, to not just treat people in isolation. And I think there's some new things I'm hearing about that. Was it family systems or something? Looking at the relationship dynamics is very beautiful. This is what it is. It's community. You live in the community, your habits come up, people will touch you, and it is a good place to train. And you learn to be more acceptance of the other. That same energy can be more acceptance of yourself. Be more accepting of yourself, you can be more accepting of another. You see the dynamics? So there is a challenging thing living community. It's not all smooth and handy and dandy something. But it's also a great opportunity for us to celebrate together, to be in. So I think this is our teacher's and to create that trust, the safety within each other, within the community. And this is the two things I'll leave with for us to reflect about. And this is present-based healing process, practice. Community-based healing together. You know the Dharma sharing that's happening. You can see it when you hear and you co-cry with someone. It's not your story, but you also cry. What is that? That is community healing. And there is a relief after you cry. And it is not even your story. It's not your story, but it is your story. So those are two things. Our teacher has spent his whole life teaching and promoting. So this is something we hope for you to help us, do some research for us, experiment, find out things, and please inform us, share with us, because that's something we're experimenting with. So thank you for your support and for your presence. And we'll hear 3 sounds of the bow here for us to let go. Come back to the present moment, to know and to trust in the process. Everything that needs to be healed, to be known, to be experienced, will happen in its time, in its own time. No need to rush. And how wonderful to enjoy peace, happiness, nature at the same time as we are holding challenging moments. They can be together. There's no perfect health. All a process.